All right. Well, this particular webinar is one of my favorites, going over people's resumes and coming up with going over resumes. I think it's probably one of the most important resume webinars you guys can be on and girls, because we're going to go over kind of the most common mistakes that people make with resumes. The resumes I picked today, I think I've gotten most of the resumes that people have submitted all have lots of good things, that can be fixed. And so we'll go over those. To start, what I'll do is I'm going to go over just real briefly some of kind of the main rules, the mistakes that people make on their resumes. And I'll start with just going over this document with you real quickly, which is an article on BCG that I wrote called 29 Rules to Make Your Resume More Marketable. After the webinar, I'll send you a collection of other resume articles that I've written that I think will help you quite a bit. And I'll also send you a book that I've written about resumes that talks about that as well. The book is a couple hundred pages, so it will help you. At the outset, I want to say that resumes are something that is literally the most important thing that you can have when you're applying to work in law firms. Now, I concentrate on law firms, so when I review resumes today, I'm going to talk about what the resumes need to have to work in law firms. Just to give everyone a little bit of background, every single resume that's ever come into BCG Attorney Search I've reviewed, and there's over 600,000 attorney resumes that have come in over the past 20 plus years. And I've reviewed every single one of them. And when I review a resume, what I'm looking for, pretty simple. It's not really that complex. I'm looking, can the person get hired by a law firm? And it doesn't matter the quality of the law firm. It could be an AmLaw 100 law firm. It could be a small law firm. It could be a good law firm. It could be a bad law firm. I only make money working with attorneys if I can place them in law firms. So the first thing I look at is just the resume. I can look at a resume very, very quickly and decide if it's a good resume or not a good resume, and if the law firm is likely to hire that person. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about kind of the lens that law firms use. I probably understand that lens better than anyone because I've placed so many attorneys, thousands of them personally, and the only time I'm willing to invest my effort in that and my company's effort is if the person looks like they're likely to get a job. So I'm going to talk to you about through that lens today that I look at the current candidates, and then I'll go and review everyone's resume that's on this call that submitted it. And if you haven't submitted your resume, you're going to learn a lot. This is probably, in terms of what you're going to learn today. If you learn this stuff on your resume, almost any resume can be fixed to work in a law firm. So you'll see lots of different examples and things that you may be doing on your resume, and we'll look at pretty much every type of resume the people are using to get into to law firms and to try to get into law firms. So that's what we'll go over today. Some of the resumes we're looking at are marketable. Majority of them aren't going to be because of mistakes, and we'll talk about that, right at the outset. One of the first mistakes that people make on resumes is they have stuff on there that has nothing to do with practicing law. So they have previous jobs that don't have anything to do with practicing law that may take up like half a page. And all law firms care about is stuff about practicing law. They also only care about the practice area that you're applying for a job in. So if you have other practice areas in previous jobs, you don't want to talk about those. You just want to say you're like an associate or whatever that job was, if it has nothing to do with the practice area that you're in, because law firms are only hiring people to work in a practice area. The jobs do not ask for people to do 3 or 4 different things. They all typically ask for one practice area. So you need to have that. You don't have summaries of experience at the top of your resume. Having a summary of your experience is assuming that law firms don't know how to review what your previous experience was at a law firm. So law firms are not dumb. They can look at your resume and understand exactly what you do based on your experience. You do not need to summarize for them as if they have no idea what you do based on that experience. You do not need a summary of experience. People that put summaries of their experience at the top often are getting resume advice from resume companies that have nothing to do with getting a job in law firms. They do that for people that they think are going to have their resume searched by computers and things. And that's just not how law firms operate. They see a resume, they like it, they don't need a summary. You have to do things on your resume that look like don't have other distractions and other priorities. So that means you have things that just look like you have other interests other than practicing law, other than working in a law firm. And I'll talk more about that later in that, but you need to make sure that your resume looks like your only priority is practicing law, not other things. You have to look like you're someone that will sit down in a law firm and work as a soldier and do whatever they need, and you don't have other interests that are stronger. People have a lot of jobs sometimes, so they think it's important to list every single job they have. No, if you have 4 or 5 jobs on your resume, which is okay, you don't need to list a lot of experience. If you've had too many jobs, I'll show you what you do today, but you don't need to list them all on your resume. Summarize what they did. You need to look manageable. We'll talk a little bit more about that today, but you need to look like someone that can follow orders. You don't want to look like you've had businesses on your resume. Law firms don't like that. If you've had businesses, that means you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are always looking for the next best thing. Contract attorneys, we'll talk about that today as well. There's going to be some resumes on here that are contract attorneys. We're going to have to talk about how to frame that. Law firms for permanent positions are interested in people that want to work there full time and that have gotten experience that an associate or a partner or whatever has, tends to be a lot more advanced than a contract attorney. So you have to frame that experience in the right way. Generalist, again, I talked about that earlier. You don't want to look like a generalist. You want to look like someone that's very focused on one specific area of law. If you are a generalist, that means you don't have focused experience in whatever the practice area is that the law firm is hiring for. So if a law firm's advertising for a personal injury attorney and you write down that you do corporate and IP and all these different things, they're going to hire someone that looks like they're a personal injury attorney. Law firms hire based on the scent of a resume. So your resume needs to look like you're only focused on one practice area. We'll talk about that. Law firms also, have a preference for, people that are younger. That's just how they work. Younger people are more motivated most of the time. Their skills they're trainable. They don't think they know what they're doing. It's easier for them to work for older people. Older people do not like working for younger people. So we have to talk about how to do that. You don't want to look like an academic. You write a bunch of papers on there and so forth. You're an academic. You're theoretical. Law firms hire people that are direct. They certainly can have past academic interests. They certainly can write papers about their practice area, but they don't want people that look overly academic. Law firms have to, when you're practicing in a law firm, you have to be direct. You have to do work for clients in a way that's direct and not give them a bunch of theory because they're paying high hourly rates. You have to learn how to be direct, synthesize complex information in a way that academics don't. Academics take theories and they just kind of go to town on them. People often will list all these bar admissions, and you have to be very careful about that. We'll talk about that. If you have all these different bar admissions and you're trying to work in a given city, law firms will often think that maybe you'll want to work in one of those other cities. We'll talk more about how the resumes are framed. Your academic accomplishments go at the end of your resume. So a lot of times, if you have more than 5 years of experience, people that went to Columbia Law School, Harvard, and all these things will list that as the first thing on their resume for often a decade or more. And law firms do not care where you went to school after you're out a few years. I mean, they certainly like it, but they're more concerned with your experience. Law school and college activities, people list all these ridiculous things, that they were a member of the Muslim Student Society, the Christian Law Society, these different societies and things. Law firms do not care about that. They want people that look focused. If you're a member of the Corporate Law Society and you're a member of and you want to be a corporate law firm, showing that you've always been interested in corporate law will help. You don't, and that's what you should do. Skills should not be listed unless they're extraordinary. People will list things like the fact that they know how to do Lexis and Westlaw on their resumes, which are things that every attorney knows how to do. So you just shouldn't be listing that. References, if a law firm wants references, they will get them. You do not have to tell them that they're available on request. Of course they're available on request. That's insane. Why would you list that? If you don't have a legal job, we'll talk a lot about that today. You don't want to look like you're not practicing law. Short-term jobs that you've had for a few months or 3 months, you really should not list those if you don't have to. We'll talk more about that. The resume needs to be consistent. So what does that mean? It means that your resume needs to have, consistency in titles, responsibilities, locations. Your resume needs to look very consistent in your practice area. Focus, I talked about that. dabblers, but I don't talk about that. If you overwhelm your resume with too much information, which a lot of people do, we'll talk a lot about that today. That's just going to distract the user. When a good lawyer goes to court, and this is what good lawyers do, they summarize information in a very easy to read, focused way that's easy for a judge to read. Judges, when they read information, will go and they will basically scan it. They'll look at the subject headings, they'll look at a few lines beneath it, and they'll go through each page in maybe 10 or 15 seconds. They're not going to spend a lot of time on it. That's the same thing that an employer does. If you bog down an employer with a bunch of information, they're going to get annoyed. You do not look like a good attorney if you're bogging down your resume with a bunch of information, which we'll talk about today. Upward mobility, we'll talk about that way. Today, we'll talk about people going to law schools in foreign countries. We'll talk about how to work if you're a solo practitioner. That's something we need to do. You don't need to call yourself different things. Say things like, I'm a accomplished this and that. People do that. That's ridiculous. Law firms are there to judge that. You're not the one to point it out to them. That's their job. Your job as an attorney, by the way, this is the job of any attorney, is to cover up your weaknesses and make them look strong. So if you have weaknesses on your resume, you want to make yourself look strong. What does that mean? So if you're representing a murderer and you're an attorney going to trial, you don't talk about, how the attorney has previous convictions. You don't talk about how the attorney, I'm sorry, not the attorney, but your client has done these wrong things before. You cover them up if you try not to list them. You don't talk about weaknesses. So you need to take your resume and think about, how do I cover up all the weaknesses in my resume? And then the final thing is, you need to take your resume and run it through Grammarly or Writing Aid to ensure that the errors are fixed. Law firms are hired by clients to write very polished documents, and whether it's a contract or it's will or it's a legal brief. And if you have things on your resume that look like you're not focused for some reason, you don't have the ability to write something without grammatical errors, then a law firm's not going to hire you. Lawyers are trained to zero in on grammar weaknesses, on punctuation weaknesses. The best lawyers produce work product that is perfect. It's not only focused and short and direct, but it doesn't have errors in it. So these are the rules we'll cover today. I didn't want to spend too much time on them, but I want to let you know that when I go through these resumes today, I'm going to be covering a lot of the stuff, and it's all very, very important. And we'll go through them right now. Okay, so this is the first resume. Let's see here to that. So this person is a graduate of a good law school. They put their GPA on there to say that they were in the top 25%. If you go to law school and you're not, and you don't do extraordinarily well, law firms are not concerned about people that are in the top 25%. If you're in the top 5% or the top 10%, that's very, very good. But you do not want to have to list you don't want to list a grade point unless it's extraordinary. So listing top 25% is not cum laude is good. So you would list that, but you would just list cum laude. So cum laude, law firms don't know if that's top 10%. They don't know if it's top 5%. They don't know exactly what that is. And then you don't want to list that you were on the dean's list 2 semesters. If you were on the dean's list only 2 semesters, then that means you weren't on the dean's list 6 other semesters. So why would you highlight something on your resume that talks about how you were only on the dean's list 2 semesters? If I read that, I'm like, why wasn't the person on the dean's list for 6 more semesters? Why are they telling me that they have only did really good performance 2 semesters? So you may be proud of that, but if you list that information, it's not going to help you, because it's going to actually detract from the strength of your resume. So you don't want to list the fact that you were doing something like that. Then telling people that you graduated early, you may be proud of that. I guess that's okay. I don't have a problem with that on your resume, but in general, you're only trying to list, very strong things. And then you don't need to tell people that this is a journal, the Wisconsin Law Review. The Wisconsin Law Review is a very good thing to have. So you take this off. You could certainly list the Dean's Academic Achievement Award. people don't know what that is. So that's good. It sounds really strong. And then you don't need to, graduation is fine, but I would just say dean's graduation, academic award, academic achievement award, and then after that, just say that you were on the Wisconsin Law Review. You don't need to point out to people that this was the sorry the the you don't need to point out to people that this is a journal. It's not a journal, it's a law review. Law reviews are different than journals. So you would remove that. So this is kind of how you want to frame your academic achievements. You want everything to look as strong as possible. You don't want to put any doubt into your performance. So people do this all the time. They're very proud of various academic things. But if those academic things aren't extraordinary, why would you draw attention to them? Now, this person seems very interested in the fact that they graduated early from these different schools. I guess that shows a lot of motivation, but it just kind of detracts from the overall resume. That's great that this person graduated early, but I'm not sure that it's necessary to put on there. I would not put it on there. I think that's a judgment call. It's 50-50, but I guess it's okay. So this person says that they graduated with a BA in political science and international studies. They're doing the same thing. They're saying, that they graduated in the top 25% and what their GPA is. Now up here, the person also put their GPA, which sounds very good. But I probably would just leave that a cum laude as well. And then same thing here, university honors, they only got that 3 semesters. So if you were only got dean's honors 3 semesters, why would you draw attention to that? It's not, it basically detracts from the overall experience, overall stuff that this person got. Then the person also is listing their GPA and saying that they're top 25%. If you want, you can list your GPA, but in general, if you went to a top law school like you did, you probably had a good GPA. So I would just say cum laude. Keep in mind, everything you're doing on a resume, and this particular resume is a good example, you need to shorten it. You don't need to have a lot of, information on here that is detracting from just the overall theme, which is excellence. So you draw people towards excellence. You don't draw them towards things that aren't really good. So you don't say you were only on the dean's list 3 semesters. You don't say that you're in the you whatever. I mean, you don't want to list those things there. Now you could say the GPA here if you want, but when people look at the top 25% and they see that, it looks like great inflation. Law firms are not looking at your resume and thinking that you did something very, very special by doing really well in school. They usually can figure that out by these awards, and so I don't think you need to list that as well. So this person is listing their bar admissions and end of their resume. There's a couple problems with this. So the first thing is anybody that graduates from the University of Wisconsin Law School, at least the last time I checked, is automatically admitted into the Wisconsin bar. If this person is working as an attorney advisor in Washington, D.C., now working for the government does not always make you eligible to be, you're not always have to have a bar admission, but saying you're District of Columbia eligible, a lot of people do this on their resumes. Every attorney in the country is District of Columbia eligible. District of Columbia is the easiest bar that anybody can possibly get admitted to, because all you have to do is be admitted in one other jurisdiction, and you can do that. So telling law firms that you're District of Columbia eligible is not something that you need to tell them. Every attorney in Washington, D.C. knows that if you pass one bar, you're District of Columbia eligible. So you do not need to put that on your resume. You also don't need to put on your resume these bar admissions at the very top. Bar admissions go at the end of the resume. So you put that there if you want, and people do that, that's good. But the other thing is, if you're District of Columbia, if you're admitted to a bar, you like this, it's not, really necessary. Now, this is actually good. The person is admitted to Illinois, so I like that. Listing Wisconsin here is probably okay if you have this, but you don't need to say you're District of Columbia eligible, because everybody in Washington, D.C. knows that if you're admitted to any bar or anybody in any state in the country knows that if you're eligible to the District of Columbia. So why would you say something that's just self-explanatory? In Wisconsin, you certainly can list that, I guess, if you want, but and then Illinois is good. Okay, so let's talk about the experience section. So now we're looking at the experience section and we're looking at Grammarly. So this is a problem because you can see here what this person did wrong with Sarbanes-Oxley. You can see what they did wrong here, with the article usage, with the punctuation problem, with the article usage here, presented and introduction. You have a spacing issue. You have an issue with administrative law, and the thing after that, you have all these inconsistent spacings. So what does inconsistent spacing means? It means that this person wrote this resume and they have spacing that in some cases is one space, in others it's two space, that there's spacing off between different things. There's just all sorts of problems with this. And these problems shouldn't exist. So when I look at a resume, I see all this. When I'm a good attorney working in a major law firm, I see all this. And we'll get farther into this particular resume, but why would you say July to 2021 to 2021 and abbreviate August, but not July? It doesn't, you would say the whole word August. And so this starts to get really problematical when you start getting into this. Every attorney should be using Grammarly when they write a resume. It's just non-negotiable. You need to be using Grammarly when you're working when you're working on your resume. Okay, so this says this is a government position. I took the name of the employer out, Office of Administrative Law Judges, and then the person says they're an attorney advisor from August 22 from the present. So let's talk a little bit about this. So the person says they independently drafted orders on motions to dismiss and summary judgment and federal whistleblowing claims, SOX and the Wendell H. Ford Investment Reform Act of the 21st century, Air 21. Okay. So there's a couple of things that are happening here. So this person just needs to say drafted. You don't need to say independently. Why would you say independently? Of course you were independent when you were writing those. The person made a mistake with the spacing of Sarbanes-Oxley. The person made a mistake with this of and Wendell Holmes. They made a mistake with the. And so you go through this and you start looking at all this. Now, how does a good attorney look at this sort of stuff? Oh, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So that was done improperly too, you can see. So it's the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX. Now, this person wittingly is showing that they're an experienced attorney. So I'm an experienced attorney. I worked in major law firms and I know how to read this stuff. But the rule is if you want to say SOX like you do here and you want to put it in the parentheses, you only say this. These are rules that you need to learn as an attorney. And this is what good attorneys do. And presumably, if you're trying to get a job in a law firm, you want good attorneys to be reviewing your resume. So you would not put SOX if it's not referred to in other areas of the resume. So what does that mean? This means that the rule is it's one of the most basic rules of writing briefs and so forth. You only put SOX like that, and you only put Air 21 if you're going to talk about it later in the resume, because you're only doing this. So if you would say more about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act here, and you were shortening it here, so when the reader got to other parts of your resume, you would be able to say SOX instead of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. That's the rule. So there's no reason to say SOX. There's no reason to say Air 21, because if you're saying Air 21, the law firm reading this is going to expect you to be shortening that and to only say SOX. So if they were saying, advised on SOX legal issues, you would say that instead of Sarbanes-Oxley there. So the reader of your resume knows what that means, and then you don't have to write it in more detail later. So you don't do that right there. And then, and then this person has this stuff where they're not putting periods after everything. I guess that's okay. So you have that. So you go here, advised on legal issues such as the Sovereign Defense Sovereign Immunity Act, collateral estoppel, due process for insurance, permanent employment certification, perm appeals decisions. You don't do that. And so what I'm showing you with these resumes is when people write a resume, they're unwittingly making mistakes that show that they're not a well-trained lawyer. And so you have to, I don't understand. Also, this person was on the Wisconsin Law Review. Typically, you're trained to do this stuff. I was on Law Review. You're trained to look at documents and things and articles in a great amount of detail. But, you have, you have this stuff. So I'm just looking at, this resume, by the way, is lit up with all sorts of grammatical errors. So, you don't need to put that. So presented and introduction, law of civil procedure, question, you need to have a comma. You need to have a comma before and. You go here, the person for some reason is, let's see, July 21, August. They don't have too much of a problem, but you put August. There's no reason to abbreviate August if you're not, if you're not doing that. And then you see this rule here where it's saying update the spacing. So then the Fair Labor Standards Act, FSLA, same thing. And then you get into here in the Fair Labor Standards Act. So that's improper. And then, advised partner, EOC liability, profane maxites, and so forth with an internal member for small business clients, aided partner research. So this person, oh, wait, here we go. I'm sorry, this is right here. Okay, so you have all this stuff about the experience. Now, the problem is I can't figure out by reading this exactly what type of attorney this is. So if this attorney wants to work in a law firm, I'm sorry, but it needs to be focused on one practice area. I don't know what the practice area is. It could be whistleblower. It could be sovereign immunity. I don't know. But the problem with government resumes, and this is one of the problems if you go to work for the government as opposed to a law firm, is your resume is going to not be necessarily focused on one practice area. So how is a law firm to review this resume and decide what practice area to put you in? This might be litigation. So this could be commercial litigation. This could be, a bunch of different things. It looks more like commercial litigation to me, but it doesn't look focused on one practice area. And I do highly recommend that anybody, that wants to work in a law firm, get a law firm job out of school, because this person is probably losing their job because of Trump or Musk. And now they don't look focused on any practice area, which is going to make them difficult to get a job in a law firm. I mean, it's just, if you were a law firm and you had a job for a commercial litigation attorney, you would want to hire someone that's doing commercial litigation. If you had a job for a corporate attorney, you would want to have someone that's doing corporate. So you would have applications coming in that were corporate, and you would hire those. And you would have applications coming in that were commercial litigation, you would hire those. You wouldn't hire someone where you couldn't figure out the practice area. So I'm not trying to be rude to this person, but this is the problem when you go into the government and you have generalist type experience. Okay, so this person was a summer associate at a firm in Hooper Hathaway in Ann Arbor, and that's good. And and it looks to me like this person is doing very similar stuff that they were doing in their last job. So they were doing COVID-19 vaccine mandates, which aren't really relevant right now. They were drafting sections of an arbitration brief for executive exemptions in the Fair Labor Standards Act. And they were doing, some stuff, I guess, related to that there. So, but the problem is, this again is not focused on one practice area. Saying you advised a partner on EOC liability is not really that much. Aided partner research is not that much. I would probably take this resume. I'm just talking about, what this person did. Working for 3 months in a law firm does not give you the type of experience that's really that relevant. I would just put summer associate for extended, which is good. Worked, employment related. Maybe put work, worked employment and, whatever employment, related matters, and, and commercial litigation, something like that. And then you would take that experience, and then what a law firm needs to do is a law firm needs to, review your resume and try to understand what you do. So if this up here could be related to employment, that would be great. Or if it could be related to, whatever, one practice area, and you could figure out what am I doing the most here that's relevant to this job, because a law firm needs to read your resume and think this is what this person does, and that's it. Legal intern for 3 months, same thing. No one cares about what you did. So just, saying that you aided, authored a memo is not relevant. Legal intern, immigration justice clinic, law student associate. So that's probably not necessary. Why is that? Because all you're doing here is you're talking about immigration, and then you're talking about immigration here. Do you want to be an immigration attorney? If you want to be an immigration attorney, then you would talk about this and just lead with that and make that seem like nothing. You maybe do all immigration up there and then not talk a lot about that there. And then and then again, you get into these errors with the person doing U period dot S, which is not good. So that's not how that's written. So a good attorney is going to look at that and think that. And then same thing with the date. You have, let's see, 21 July.
And by the way, okay, your audio's on.
Okay, camera's on. Okay, we got it. I got it.
Webinar.
Hello? Hello? Oh boy. Hello? 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 Yeah, Jared, I'm still trying it.
No, it's on.
It's on? Okay. Okay.
The audio's on.
Okay. Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. My audio died, but I'm glad we're covering a lot of stuff here right now. So just give me 1 second. Hello? Hello? Okay, got it. Give me 1 second. Fixing my camera. All right. Okay, so we fixed this resume, and what you can see about how we fixed it was that we were able to camera. Turn that down. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, we got the video. Looks like no, we don't have video. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, I'm trying to get my video working here. I don't know what's going on. We may have to do this without video. Nope, now we have video with no me. Let's see here. Very strange. Second. Sorry about this. I never have these technical problems during webinars. I don't know exactly what's going on. Yeah.
Can you pause the audio?
All right, so we'll get started. My video is not working, so we'll just focus on the resumes. Okay, so this resume, I just want to show everyone, is taken from an unemployable attorney to someone who's now employed, which is awesome. So we didn't, the person before wasn't employable, and now if they want to do employment or whatever they want to do, they look to an audience like they're focused on one practice area, and that's what you need to do with every resume. Okay, so this person is in-house. I will go over this real briefly, what this person is doing. So this person is, again, talking about all of what they do at the top of the resume and making people have to read an experience summary, which is completely irrelevant to the way that an attorney will read it. An attorney will read your experience, and your experience will basically talk about what you do. So no one should be doing this. And this is something we'll see in a lot of resumes. You do not need to summarize and make people read this. It doesn't have anything to do with what you don't need to summarize it. People can read your experience and get that information. So why would you say two things at the top why would you talk about your experience and then talk about a summary? So this is something that breaks my heart. People go to resume companies often, or sometimes this is just how resumes are done in companies, and you don't need to do this. I'm going to tell this person what they need to do to get a job in a law firm. Now, you don't need to say professional legal experience. You just need to say experience. So attorneys are paid to summarize experience, and attorneys are paid to go through things and shorten them. That's how it works. So you don't need to say professional experience, you just say experience. So when you go through and review your resume, think about how you do things. So I'm not putting this person's employment here, their name, but they're in a health company, IPO backed by 6 billion. I guess that's okay. And then their jobs from that. So they've had this job for approximately 1.5 years, and they've put down all of this stuff that they've done in this 1 year, which is amazing. But it's not necessary to put all this information. You don't need to have all of this information on your resume. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to show you, what this person needs to do, but this resume is way too long. You don't need all of this information on there. So what do you do? So a lot of people have these very long resumes, and you need to shorten it to be 1 page. If a law firm has to read this, it's overwhelming. It's too much information. So why would you have all of this information on your resume when you don't need to have so much information. It's not necessary. Law firms can review your resume very quickly. They can come up with a decision of what you do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all this experience that this person has, and I'm going to run it through ChatGPT. And this is way too much. No one is going to read all this information. So anybody that is trying to look like they're doing a bunch of different things, you don't want to have all of this information on here. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT, can you modify this resume to shorten it to one page, to less than one page, and make the person look like they are narrowly focused on one practice area, if possible. So I'm gonna take the resume and put it in a ChatGPT, and I'm gonna ask them to do this with this resume. So this is streamlined for clarity, brevity, focused on positioning the person as a corporate M&A focused in-house counsel with healthcare industry experience. Okay, so look at how much better this is to be focused on one page. This may even be too long, but we're going to talk about that in a second. So we've gone through this resume. We've taken all of this language that was very confusing. It was way too much. It was overwhelming people. We've created bullet points, and those bullet points are making this read much better. So this person has way too much experience. And then I would even say, can you shorten it even further to make it shorter and more. So if you feel the need to talk about everything you've done, law firms are not impressed. They need to have things that are much easier to do. So I took but the experience here is now much shorter and focused, and much better. Can you focus this? Can you make the resume a bit longer? And do your best to focus it on one practice area. So by the way, everybody should be running the resume through ChatGPT to focus that on one practice area, and also to make it shorter if it's too long. So slightly longer, streamlined M&A focused version. It confirms key versions. So now you have all this stuff about this sort of thing, and it's much shorter, and you would do that. So I'm going to keep running this through ChatGPT, but this is a vastly improved resume, here. So it's much better. So what I would also recommend is this person's job at McDonald's was for 12 years, and this person's job at the in-house counsel was only for 1 year. So you don't want to have more experience if you have a short job. You don't want to make it look like you have more experience at that job. You want to make it look like the person has more experience at their previous job. So I would just say, and I'm just giving you like suggestions of how you do this, but the rule would be, because this person has more experience at their previous job, can you emphasize this with more depth than their previous job, than their current job. So you could do that. So then you would do that. So this is more refined. You want to, if you have your previous jobs are much longer, then you want to basically shorten it. So this would be McDonald's, and you would have more experience. Can you still shorten it and make the resume with that experience as well show be one page and be one page and be one page. Okay, so one page focus resume. So now we have a one page focus resume. So I'm going to just show you kind of what this looks like at the end. And I'll just say, can you reshow, can you redo, can you show the entire resume with your intention? So by the way, ChatGPT, you can use ChatGPT. You can use, it doesn't have to just be ChatGPT. You can use Grok, has a good one, which is the Elon Musk one, or you can use DeepSeek, which is the Chinese one, but whatever you use. And so this is not, the order of the resume. Sometimes it needs to be ordered chronologically. So sometimes you're not gonna, it's not gonna come up with perfect results. So here you go. Now we have a focused resume. So the KB McGuire, I don't even know what the hell that is. Okay, well, let's go back to the original one that it did right here. Let's see here. Here, we'll just go back to the original one. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but you typically will need to work on making ChatGPT, much, oh, I see here, we got McCabe, and so reverse, it's doing reverse chronological. Just make sure I fix this, reverse chronological. Well, it's recent, but maybe chronological for a while. Yeah, so here's your final resume right here. So again, ChatGPT is something everybody should be using with their resumes. You can see here, this is shorter, this is longer. These just these last experiences are shorter. And then you have, then the resume is very focused. So I just want everyone to take a look. So this resume right here is much easier to read. It goes into more detail with the person's previous experience, and then the later experiences are de-emphasized. And then the law firm job is just one line. So people want to read this resume, and they need to get a sense real quickly that this person is focused on one practice area and not doing a variety of things. So let's take a look at the current resume, and then we'll post in the new resume. Now, again, there's all these typos, there's these best versions, there's these completed, uncompleted sentences, there's these preposition issues, there's uncompleted sentences, there's incorrect words, there's all these issues. Oh, shoot, what am I doing here? Oh, shit. Okay, well, I made a bunch of corrections in everyone's resume, and some way I can redo that. Well, anyway, that's not good. But so you can see how we shorten this resume. So then we go here to experience, and I don't care if you're in a law firm or what you do, but this person's resume is just out of control. It's just way too long. It confuses readers. It doesn't look focused on one thing. The person feels the need to list every single thing they've ever done. And that just makes you look like a generalist. It's also very difficult for people to read. And so if you have a resume that's difficult for people to read, they're not going to read it. People look at a resume and they look at it for like 10 seconds. So now we get the resume that looks like this. It's much shorter, and the bullet points should be here, but you can see how much shorter it is. It looks very focused, corporate related work, and then contract lifecycle management. That's good. Everything looks much more focused. You can see here that ChatGPT is still making errors. So you run it through Grammarly. You can't just depend on ChatGPT, but now this resume is fixed. And because this resume is fixed, even though the person's in-house, they now stand a much better job opportunity of being able to get a job in a law firm because it's focused, it's short, it doesn't go into unnecessary details, and it's just telling people what the person does in a very direct way. Now, I do want to talk about a little bit about the person's education and prior experience. I think the prior experience is actually okay. This is actually very good. The person has had a lot of jobs, obviously, since graduating from law school. So they're trying to shorten the resume to not contain all of these other jobs and make it too long. So this is good. You could actually do this if you wanted to, probably, even with associate job in the law firm, put that in there. And you might even want to do that. I guess 2007 is not too far back, but you could do that. And then the person has gone in and they've put in their law school JD and their BA. There's no honors there. There's nothing, which is okay. But the person's doing something that older people generally do. They don't put down their graduation year. They don't put down their graduation year if you're older. Like, you don't put down your graduation year because you're like, oh, if I put down my graduation year, people are going to discriminate against me. They're going to discriminate against you anyway. So if you don't put down your graduation year, they're going to think that you're not being direct and honest. And if you're not being direct and honest and you're trying to hide it, you're basically highlighting that you could be very, very old, and people don't care. Like, if they're hiring you, they're going to hire you because they like your experience. They're not going to, you're not going to, if they interview you and you're very old, or you're very old anyway. So just let them interview you based on your age. Don't worry about it. That's it. So you just, you don't put down, you don't try to hide information that is obvious to the reader. So you always, if you're older, you always put down your graduation year. If you're not putting it down, you're basically announcing to every person that reads your resume that you're very old, and you don't want people to know that, and you're hiding it. So no, you always put down your graduation year. And then let me see here. The final thing, prior experience is good. And I think that education and bar admissions is okay. Okay, it's resume 2. Okay, so let me just see here. I may have screwed something up. Additional resume. I think that's the same one. Okay. All right, we'll go to resume 3. Okay, so this person is also in-house. I'm going to take away this stuff at the top doesn't belong there, we talked about earlier. Professional summary doesn't belong there. People do not care about any of this. All this stuff needs to come out. This is actually a law firm attorney. If the law firm's reading this, every law firm knows what a major law firm is. And if they're interviewing you because you're in a major law firm. They're not going to interview you based on everything that you're saying that you did. They're just not, they don't care. They're looking at what your law firm is. No one, everybody on this call does not need to do a professional summary. If you do a professional summary, you're basically saying, you're an idiot. Like, you cannot understand what I do in a law firm or understand what I do. So I need to summarize this for you, because if I don't, you're not going to know what I do. And your resume should tell them what you do, and you don't need to have a professional summary. So accomplishments and experience, you don't want to say you have accomplishments, because everybody that's reading your resume is going to know your accomplishments from the resume. So they don't need to see that. So then you go here again and you eliminate experience. You don't need to have experience there or professional summary. You just say experience. So this person is at an AmLaw 100 law firm in Massachusetts, and they were a corporate IP attorney between 1992 and 1994. And then the resume, for whatever reason, is reverse chronological and is talking about the experience in a way that is backwards. So they're very proud of the fact that they were at this AmLaw 100 law firm between 1992 and 1994, and that they were at this other really good law firm between 1994 and 1996, and that they were at this other law firm company between 1998, and then they've been a solo practitioner for all this time. So solo practitioners, there's nothing wrong with being a solo practitioner, but if your greatest accomplishment was being an AmLaw 100 attorney between 1992 and 1994, that goes at the end. That's your latest experience. So people will lead with things that they think are their biggest accomplishment. So their biggest accomplishment may have been working at an AmLaw 100 law firm, but that was 21 years ago. So that goes at the end. So you don't need to talk a lot about that experience. So I'll take that off. Person was a corporate attorney and then an IP attorney. So I don't like that. I don't like that the person says they were IP and then they were corporate. So you're doing two different practice areas here. You're doing corporate and you're doing IP. So law firms want to see people that are focused. So you typically want to make your experience look like you're focused on one practice area. Okay, Goodman Proctor, 1994 to 1996. Okay, that's a good firm. And then the person went in-house for 4 years, and then they took a 2-year break for some reason, and they also took a 2-year break they took a 2-year break after this. I don't know why there's all these 2-year breaks, but I guess that's okay. Typically, your resume needs to not show periods of unemployment. If this person did that, that's okay. Okay, so we're talking about all these different things the person did. Again, this resume is way too long. There's too much going on. There are statements about relationships. There's statements, they're doing something very bad here. They're saying 4. There's a rule that if a number is between 1 and 10, that it's spelled out. So these are serious mistakes. They show not a thorough understanding of grammar and rules. IP related would be, you would have a dash after it. Investor would be investor back, we'd have a dash. You'd have the range of, transactional matters. You have all these different things, commas, all these problems with this resume. So everybody needs to run their resume through Grammarly, and you need to do that. These are just so many errors, that are just very serious. They show a lack of attention to detail. They show a lack of understanding of grammar. They show all these problems, and this, just needs to be drastically short. So let's go through. I'm not going to do that. We saw all the grammar errors, and then we got to fix this. So we'll go into ChatGPT and we'll say, can you list this person's most recent experience first, make the resume one page, make it focused on one practice area, and later positions second, third, etc. So people do this too all the time. Like, this person is very proud of having worked in AmLaw 100 law firm, which they should do. There's nothing wrong with being proud of working at an Alma Mater law firm. But telling someone you were trained in a law firm 22 years ago is not necessary. People can see that from the resume. One page and make it, and somewhere and make the experience short and easily readable, and readable, and make the person look focused on one practice area and eliminate self-aggrandizing language and make the person employable by a law firm that would be seeking specialists. And that, okay, so we're going to do this real quick, and I'll run it through ChatGPT to show you the results. But right now you can see that this resume is just freaking all over the place. And this is why these resume reviews are so powerful, because all of these major issues, like everyone has these, everyone we're going to go through has punctuation issues. Everyone that we're going to go through has errors with too many experience. All this stuff, can be fixed. So here we go. Technology transactions, licensing and commercial transactions, licensing, life sciences licensing, software, biotech, and IP heavy transactions. Now, you may not like this resume that I've done, whoever's resume this is, but you are now employable in a law firm. Like, you can be a technology transactions attorney. You can do licensing. You're now focused on licensing. Now you're focused on licensing. So what's happening here? I just want everyone to understand. This is extremely freaking important. I mean, it's fucking important. And the reason it's so important is because if you want to get a job in a law firm, like, this current resume is a shitstorm. Like, it's just going into all these different things, and it's just long, it's hard to read. It's out of control. So no one is going to hire this person. They don't even know what they do. I can't even tell what this person does. I have no idea. So you use AI, and all of a sudden you get this resume that looks like this person does one thing. Now, you may not like the fact that you're focusing on you're doing one thing, but think about if you're a law firm. You have someone now that was a technology transactions attorney between 2004 and the present. You're not even saying you're solo, you're just saying the name of your firm. Technology transactions and licensing. And it's short, it's direct. And if you think about this from the point of view of a client, if you're a client hiring someone to do technology transactions, and you saw this resume up here, like, why would you possibly want to hire this person? Like, you don't even know what they do. Like, this is not good. Law firms wouldn't be comfortable giving work to you because they don't know what you do. And, so now you have this resume, and if a law firm has a need for a technology transactions attorney, then they're going to hire you. How awesome is this? So you just go through ChatGPT, and now you have a focused resume. And why are we doing this? Why are we focusing the resume? This is extremely important and something that 85% of attorneys do. And because they do it, they don't get hired. They have resumes that talk about all these different practice areas. Law firms hire only specialists. They have jobs for specialists. They do not have jobs for generalists. If they need a technology transactions attorney, that's what they're going to advertise for. And this is actually a very good practice area because there's a lot of demand for it. If law firms have an opening for a corporate attorney, they're not going to hire someone that does 15 different things. They're going to hire someone that does general corporate or corporate M&A. So you have to make your resume look focused on one practice area. Everybody should be using the prompt. I will have a recording of this hopefully later, and you can look at the prompts I've used. But this resume is drastically improved. It's fucking awesome now. It's just awesome. It's a great resume. If I needed a technology transactions attorney, and I saw this person's resume just on their law firm website, I would hire them. If I needed a technology transactions attorney that was experienced, and I could give them all this work to do, and I had work for them, I would want to hire this person to work in my law firm to do technology transactions. So this person has gone instantly from unemployable, majorly unemployable. They could sit there and submit resumes to law firms for years or a decade or more and not get any interviews. And then now they have this resume, and all of a sudden they're employable. And again, doing this stuff like, listen, you're an AmLaw 100 law firm, no one cares. Like, that's saying, this is the thing that I'm most proud of. My whole freaking 30-year career is working in AmLaw 100 law firm. And since then, I've been all over the freaking map doing all this different shit. And no, like, this resume right now is fucked up. And I'm sorry to go in that. And,
and do that, but and say those kind of language, but you need to have a short resume that's one page. People need to read it and figure out what you do. And now this person has an awesome resume that they're going to get hired. But someone will hire this person if they have a need for that. Now, there's going to be age discrimination and all that kind of stuff going on here, but that's fine. So now the person, what else is really good about this resume, by the way, is they have a technical background. I like that. So they have a technical background in chemical engineering, which is a freaking impossible, you have to be very smart to do that. So that's related to IP. Technology transactions is related to IP, biotech's related to IP, life sciences are related to IP, laboratories related to chemicals and things. This is, so this is very good. This resume now, you look at it and the resume needs to give a scent. And what I mean by a scent, that the resume needs to basically communicate, like if you're looking at a resume, you need to understand, what does this person do? That's it. And so now this person does this. And so it's a much improved resume. Again, person's doing the same thing. They're not listing their graduation year. They've done a very good job just saying they're cum laude, which we talked about earlier in the earlier resume where they had all this different stuff. They're saying that they were in the Boston Law Review, which is very impressive. And then they're saying they got these degrees. And then they're saying they're licensed to practice law in Maine, Massachusetts, and Wisconsin. And the Wisconsin's inactive. Okay, that's fine. So now it's good. Community involvement, that's probably okay. I don't mind that, but now we have an awesome resume. It's one page, people know what they do, and that's focused. I want everyone to understand what we just did here. This change to this resume that we've made will change this person's life if they're applying for those jobs. It will change the trajectory of their career. It will enable them to get jobs doing technology transactions and licensing in other companies if they want, because companies can understand it, and it's very good. So gain strategic legal experience with the University of Wisconsin Division of Intercollegiate Activities. No, you don't need to tell people that you gained that. You just, whatever the hell that is, you didn't even have a title. So why would you put that? So now you have a very focused resume. And I really like what happened with this resume. I'm very enthusiastic about it now. And I like this person, and they're employable and they're focused, and it's kick ass. It's a good resume. And these kind of changes to your resume will change your life. Why will they change your life? Because if you're focused on one practice area, then that's what law firms are hiring for. Again, law firms do not have an opening saying, we're interested in someone that's provided strategic legal advice with this. We're interested with someone that's done advice with this. We're interested in someone that's done this and this and this. No, if you look at any job opening on Law Crossing, on Indeed, or whatever, LinkedIn, these are jobs for people to do one thing. And so when an employer reads this, if in-house employer has an opening for technology transactions attorney, they're going to like this person. If a company has a law firm has an opening, they're going to like them. So this resume is drastically improved. And everybody's resume, by the way, this is the big thing. This is what 85% of resumes don't do. Everybody's resume needs to be focused and go through and focus on one thing, one practice area, and not go into a lot of details about other stuff as well. Okay, so this person is doing the same thing. They're saying they're experienced healthcare attorney with exceptional experience at all levels with a proven record of negotiating, drafting, and problem solving. No, why would you do that? Skills are strategic negotiation, stakeholder management, regulatory policy analysis, all this different stuff. It's completely unnecessary. People want to be able to read your resume and understand exactly what you're doing. So you don't say professional experience, you say experience, and that's it. So you just say experience. So that's all they need. Senior counsel for special projects, assistant general counsel, assistant counsel, associate attorney. Okay, same thing with this resume. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you can still see here, different errors. This person's not as bad as the other ones, but again, we're seeing all of these punctuation errors, all this different stuff. So let's just fix this, do the same thing, and then we'll move on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this resume because it's very easy we have to fix it. So we'll just go through and we'll do the same thing and run it through ChatGPT and get the results. So can you do the same thing? Can you do the same thing with this resume as needed? So we can do that. Right through this, analyzing it, a law firm employable version of the resume, reverse chronological order. Okay, junior closing products. So going through this, and that's all you get. So senior general counsel. So I'm going to take a look at this real quickly. Negotiate legislation with policy agencies, Medicaid, healthcare. Can you make this? Can you make this more focused on what practice areas? So the reader can deduce this is how the person is more employable by law firms as specialists. Now we're going to do that. So here's tightly focused one-page resume, exclusively healthcare, regulatory, and Medicaid focused. So this is awesome. So now we're going to go through this, and it's all about healthcare, all about healthcare. So law firms, by the way, have a real need for healthcare attorneys. So this is now a very good resume. So just these simple changes have also changed this person's life. So what is the rule? The rule is that you have to be focused on one practice area. This is what you need to do in your resume. No one cares. Like if you did all this other stuff, it actually detracts from the message. It makes you unemployable. Like you don't, even though you think it's important to list what you've done because you can do all these different things, it doesn't make you employable. It actually makes you unemployable because anybody that's hiring you will have a position for someone that's a specialist and not a generalist. So now we've done all this awesome stuff to this person's resume, and it's completely focused on one thing. And this person is suddenly, miraculously, by the way, employable as a healthcare attorney in the government, in a law firm. Law firms actually have needs for senior people like this. Good law firms actually hire senior people like this. But if they didn't have, if this person, even AmLaw 100 law firms are looking for people with this kind of experience. Excuse me, I'm trying to think something. Even AmLaw 100 law firms have needs for people with this kind of experience, because these sorts type of people with focused experience like this are in demand by law firms. It's just that people need people that have, deep experience. And now this person has deep experience as a legislative health counsel, as the healthcare counsel of the government. I mean, this is like just a profound and, life-changing change to this person's resume. And we're going to see this with all the resumes we review today. We're going to see people's lives change by fixing this. And this is how important this stuff is. Like, this is beyond important, because you're taking your resume based on what you're learning today, and you're fixing it. And people, again, do not care about a bunch of different things. Law firms, in-house companies, they don't care about that. They don't care about these summaries of your experience at the top. They just don't care. Like it doesn't matter. But anybody that needs a specialist wants someone like you. Okay, let's go to the next one. Qualifications and highlights. Okay, so this is another thing that's completely unnecessary. Public trust clearance, sponsored by the U.S. Department of Health Insurance, utilize e-discovery rules and procedures to do all this stuff. No, again, same thing. Why would you list your bar admissions at the very top? Like, is that your biggest accomplishment, is passing the bar? Like, no one cares. Like, it goes, and by the way, like, this person also says bar admissions to being admitted to the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. As everyone knows, you get admitted to a bar just based on a motion from another attorney. So no one cares that you were admitted to the U.S. District Court. So anybody that's putting district court admissions on your resume, you're just clouding it with unnecessary information. No one cares about your district court admissions. Okay, so this is a difficult one. So the person is saying that they've been a contractor from April 20 to the present. So contract attorney, just so everyone understands the way that law firms read it, it reads as someone that's a temporary attorney that is basically paid by the hour, isn't given the same responsibilities as a normal attorney, is not elevated to a associate or normal attorney role because they are not, they don't have the skills, they don't want it, maybe they want the freedom. So no one wants to see someone that's a contract attorney. So what do you do with that? You say you're an attorney. The job of a lawyer is not to emphasize weaknesses. So why would you say you're a contract attorney when you can just say an attorney? Lawyers do not emphasize weaknesses on their resume. So you want to make sure that you're emphasizing strengths and not weaknesses. So just say you're an attorney is fine. Okay, so utilized e-discovery software, define e-discovery software, research and track. Okay, so this actual resume we can fix, and we're going to make it a good resume. But we're not going to call this person a contract attorney. We're also not going to call them a contract attorney here for 7 years. People do not want to hire contractors. They want to hire, different, different people doing, people that are doing permanent type things. So then they also say various staffing agencies, meaning they're just bouncing around as they get a call from a staffing agency that someone's needed for contract review. So you don't say that. You would say something along the lines of, worked with. You don't say for. You'd say we worked with, top law firm, worked with law firms, including, and then you would just say whatever the firms are, Skadden Arps, good firms. You would list those. Wilson, Sonsini, whatever, contract review. Why do you do that? I mean, I'm just want to make sure everyone understands this. So the previous resume just said that the person was working as in various staffing agencies. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just say the firms that you did the contract work for, which sound very impressive? If you were working as doing e-discovery for all of these firms, then that would be very good. Like if you're able to do e-discovery work for Skadden Arps and Wilson Sonsini, you would say, worked on behalf of, right? On behalf of, worked, with various, worked with law firms, including Skadden Arps and Wilson Sonsini. So I want everyone to understand, Wilson Sonsini and whatever, Goodwin Proctor, let's do Goodwin Proctor. And worked with various law firms, including Skadden, worked with, not for, because you're not working for them, you're working with them. So you phrase things in a way that's very focused and emphasizing strengths. So if you just say various staffing agencies, people are going to assume that you didn't do anything significant. If you say worked with various law firms, including Skadden Arps and Wilson Sonsini, and you were an attorney, not a contract attorney, that looks much better. And then you say litigation attorney with respected law firms. What the hell? You just say, just say plaintiffs firms. Why would you say respected? I mean, that's completely unnecessary. So you would just say, worked with law firms, worked with law firms, including, so you don't have to say them all. Worked for, now you say worked for law firms, including, and then you would list a couple of them. You don't need to list all. If you worked at 10, you list maybe 3 or 4. And this is the skill that everyone, needs to do, like, including, I don't know, Dave's personal injury, whatever, just personal injury, accident 1-800. I'm just giving you an example. 1-800, whatever. You would just list a couple of them. You don't have to list all of them, because if you list a couple of them, then it looks much better than listing a couple of them. Then you would say, here, same thing, worked with various law firms, worked with various law firms, including, say, attorney, and then you would just say, let's just say worked with law firms, including, and then here you would just say litigation associate, this attorney. So we're just going to go through this, same thing, attorney, same thing, list the law firms, same thing, the list of law firms. So this person, by the way, has jumped around a bunch. And this is problematical. The resume, again, is way too long. It's out of control. So, I would just say, can you modify this resume? So I put in this instruction. These instructions are important. I'm going to put in this instruction that says, can you modify this resume? And I don't care how good your resume is. Modify this resume. And I'm going to choose electronic discovery resume to make it look like this person's experience is relevant to do the same thing. And minimize your roles, call attorney instead, and make the person electronic discovery for that. So now we get this great employer-friendly specialist in e-discovery, highlights relativity in other platforms. I don't know if that's necessary. Of attorney, e-discovery, good government litigation, attorney, document review, no. I would say e-discovery, judicial law clerk, e-discovery. So, so I would focus it this way. I mean, I hate to do this. I know you're not going to like this, but you have to make the resume look focused on one practice area. So there is nothing wrong with, doing this. I'm gonna make some additional changes to this when we go through it. But now the person, and you wouldn't say various law firms, you would list a few of them. You probably don't, you can have the Circuit County Clerkship. But now we take this resume and we plug it in to this, and now this person is suddenly employable in large law firms doing e-discovery as opposed to before not looking like a strong attorney. We're gonna fix all that stuff in the resume and make it frickin' a rock star resume for this. Very easy to do. So we go through here and we fixed all this. It's very focused. We're taking the bar admissions, by the way, putting them at the back. People do not need your bar number, okay? They can look up your bar number. They don't need your bar number. Why would you put your bar number? If you're admitted to Maryland, that's it. That's all they need. And they don't need the US District Court. So put that at the end and yeah, so this person's education, okay, the person's education, which will fix the education. And I apologize for going into so much detail with this, but this, I want everyone to see the mistakes that people are making, because these are all very serious mistakes this person is making. So now the person is doing e-discovery and litigation. They're doing all this sort of stuff that's related to document review, and they would just say e-discovery attorney. You can call it e-discovery, by the way, it sounds better than document review. So e-discovery attorney, right? So you want to make yourself, worked on behalf of law firms, on behalf of law firms, including. So this is basically all about document review. That's it. And so, and if they were doing this stuff in various law firms, it's all about document review. Now, for some reason, it took off the person doing all the different law firms they worked as an associate, but that's actually very good. They worked in these different law firms on those dates, between those dates, and that looks good. So the person now looks like someone literally from 2000 to the present, or not the clerk. And again, you don't need to say all this stuff. You just say judicial law clerk. Everyone knows what a clerk does. So you take that off. You don't need information that doesn't highlight anything. Cum laude is all you need. You don't need your GPA. 3.4 is a B plus grade point average. It's probably, no one knows if that's really good. No one cares that you did dual concentrations and took class in litigation, advocacy, and family law. It's absolutely unnecessary. Getting the highest grade in one class does not highlight a lot of awesome stuff. And it's also federal income tax has nothing to do with e-discovery. And then College of Business and Management, Dean's List, 2 semesters. No, I mean, why would 2 semesters out of how many semesters are there in college? There's 8. So that means you were on the Dean's List for only 2 out of 8 semesters. That's not emphasizing, your strengths. Take it off. Now, this person says they know how to do Microsoft Office. I'm almost guaranteeing that everyone on this call knows how to do Word. So that's not going to help you. E-discovery software is probably good. So you put that on there. That's awesome. That's related. And then you put this. And then again, all e-discovery. That's it. That's all people care about. They don't care about all this stuff. And you don't emphasize that you were a contract attorney. You make yourself just look like a, e-discovery attorney. So I'm just, this person's life will be changed if they make these changes. So all of these changes will change this person's life. And then you don't need to say all this stuff there. College of Business and Management, no one cares about that. The scholarship award's good. And then affiliations, notary public. No, notary public is a secretary that becomes a notary. So you don't need that. Maryland State Bar Association from 12 years ago. And no one cares about that. No one cares that you were in the Bar Association 12 years ago. No one cares that you were in the Bar Association 12 years ago. No one cares that you were part of a single family homeowners association 15 years ago. No one cares that you were the secretary of the community association 15 years ago. No one cares that you were notary public. All these things, by the way, are just detracting from the message. So the message is that I am an e-discovery attorney. That's the message. That's the only message that you want to send. You don't want to send other messages. Why would you send other messages if you're an e-discovery attorney? That's all you need to do is send the message that you're a that you're an e-discovery attorney. That's it. And then large law firms will suddenly hire you. Any law firm would if they need an e-discovery attorney. But the way you're going, in the previous resume, they wouldn't. Okay, so let's go here. Next resume, experienced civil litigator, litigate for plaintiffs and defendants statewide, not just in your city, but all over the state. And you're not just a litigator, you're experienced. And you've done a bench trial. Okay, let's see how long you've been practicing. From 2011, you've managed to do a bench trial. That's great. Okay, with your own practice. Good for you. No one cares. Professional skills and recognition, communication with juries. Do you think that any person that's a trial attorney hasn't communicated with a jury? Like, do you need to actually tell people that? Like, again, leading with a weakness, not a weakness, but something that everyone in your practice area would do, but that is assumed is not necessarily needed. So that would be like saying corporate attorney worked on corporate documents. Like, okay, like that's what they do. So do litigators. Okay, as trial counsel, lead and collaborate with a team, most often composed with client representatives and experts. In addition to myself, I provide advice to clients that may benefit from it. Of course you provide advice to clients. That's what every litigator does. Like, what? Like, again, like, why? No one cares. Like, it's just, this is insane. Like, you don't need this. Okay, so professional experience, again, you shorten it to experience. Solo practitioner, that's okay. I litigate statewide, again, not just in your city, but in other parts of the state. No one cares. Okay, so no one cares. So consultation services to parties and attorneys, no one cares. Okay, so no, like, okay, we're gonna fix this later. Litigated statewide. So this person continually wants to tell you that had they not just litigated state cases in their location, they've done it all over the state. And why would anybody care about that? Like, it's just like, you've said it, several times, and you're all this stuff, like, you're just writing all of this stuff, like, no one cares. Like, it's just, you need to look focused. If you want to get a job in a law firm, you need to look focused. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a lot of these next resumes, because you get the idea of it, but I'll do the same thing here. Ugh, makes me sad to see this. Okay, this is fine. So now we've got this, like this, short. We fixed it. It's all about litigation, doing different types of litigation, automobiles, eminent domain, and this is fine. So litigation could be more of a generalist practice area than other practice areas, but now this person is focused on one practice area. And so this looks good. They don't have to toot their own horn. Everything on here is self-explanatory. If they're, doing hearings and trials, they've said it that way. They're not bogging it down with all this unnecessary information. And again, like, the job of an attorney when you go to court or when you're representing a client is to take very complex information and make it understandable. So you do not win a jury trial if you're saying 100 different things and the law firm doesn't, and the jury doesn't understand it. There was a famous statement in the trial of O.J. Simpson where they took this glove and they said, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. That's all they said. There was a bloody glove, didn't fit, and so they said you must acquit. Like, very, very simple. Like, that's it. 1 point out of a trial that lasted months. They just made it 1 point to get the jury to focus on one thing. And so your resume needs to do the same thing. Look at all this stuff that we've got here. I mean, it's unbelievable. We had all this stuff at the top, then we had all this stuff at the bottom. Again, no one cares. Like, it's just, everything needs to be very focused on one thing, and you need to go through and fix it like this. So now we have this, and it's very short, it's direct, people know what they do. If someone gets your resume in a law firm and they say, we need a trial attorney, which a lot of law firms do, they need someone that can do trials and do other things. And they may not have attorneys there that actually can do trials, they may do other things. That's what they hire. They hire someone that can do that. And now you're that kind of person. Instead of someone that does a bunch of different things, you're very focused on one thing and you're not going into other things. So here we go. Chaired and served as vice chair for the eminent domain committee. No one cares. Eminent domain, like, what the hell does that have to do with being a litigator? Jesus. Well, actually, let's see. No. Eminent domain and property rights, that's okay. Senior attorney, eminent domain litigation, senior attorney. Okay, I wouldn't even put eminent domain litigation, but I would just put, let me see. That's okay. I mean, I would actually go through and just make it litigation, but I'm not gonna do that right now. Managed discovery and trial, senior attorney, Florida Department, senior litigation attorney. No, conducted, okay. Managed discovery and trial preparation. If you did, trial preparation and you did jury trials, of course you did trial preparation. So you have to go through this like with a fine-tooth comb and think like, how does, all this stuff work? So, you were doing eminent domain in your current job, right? So that's good. Then you were doing, litigated automobiles and so forth, there. Then you did eminent domain here, and then you did, actually, this was eminent domain, so the eminent domain. So now someone that needs someone that can do eminent domain litigation is going to see a resume like it, or someone that needs a general litigator is going to like it, and it's much shorter and doesn't go and toot your own horn. So people like to reflect. They like to think all the stuff that they've done, and they like to go into a lot of detail about it and tell people everything they've done and basically write an essay. And you can't, your resume is not an essay. Your resume is one page. It needs to tell people what you do and go into nothing more than that kind of detail. Okay, Florida bar. So we have the Florida bar, that's fine. So, but you would just say, bar membership and education, okay, Florida bar. You don't need to put the date. You put the date here, University of Miami Trial Advocacy Program, certified legal intern. No, so just Juris Doctorate, that's all you need. Master's in Business Administration, that's good. Graduate assistant to the dean, no one cares about that. You've been out of law school for over 30 years, so no one cares that you were a graduate assistant to the dean. Then you got a bachelor's in Business Administration in 1981. That's okay. So this attorney is very old, but it's okay. Your resume is focused on litigation right now. If someone needs a litigator, they'll be interested. Okay, so this person, wow. Okay, so I'm not gonna review this resume right now because this person is a foreign attorney. It's not going to be relevant to most people on the call, but I will, this just, by the way, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there, and I hate to do it for this person that's on the call. But if you are a foreign LLM from a foreign country, especially Mongolia, I don't even know where the hell that is, and you were a tax and legal consultant, and then you were a legal expert and researcher. I don't like to say this, but I will say this. People come over to the United States all the time trying to get LLMs and think they can work in US law firms. You can get a job in a US law firm, but you're not going to be able to apply to all the firms that American attorneys are applying to, and you're going to have to apply to smaller firms that do not need people. So I'm just going to do the same thing with this resume, just to do it very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it's not really relevant to most people on the call. And I'll fix it for you real quickly, but I'm going to, fix it here. Can you do the same thing with this resume, making their experience relevant to what a US law firm will want. And, this is very simple advice. You have career services offices and LLM programs. You have all these things, and they pump out these graduates, and you pay your 100, 200,000, whatever it is. And, most people aren't teaching you how to do this. I'm sorry. I'm also sorry that law firms make it, look, law schools make it look like you get a job. But, this is what we'll do here. We'll try to make it focused on litigation, which we did. So it's very simple. And we, just we took all this experience that was just completely overwhelming, and we made it look like the person is a litigation attorney. So let's just do that. Okay. If you're Mongolian, then obviously you speak Mongolian. So why would you tell a law firm that? I mean, that's insane. Like, that's like saying if you're applying for a job in France and you're a US attorney that you are fluent in English. Like, why would you say that? Like, it's insane. Okay. So you don't want to say that. So then now this person looks much more focused for a US law firm. Here, I would not want to probably list this. There's concentrations, constitutional and civil rights, commercial law, coursework, qualifying for the New York bar exam. We'll take the bar exam in 2026. Well, of course you're qualified for the New York bar exam if you get an LLM. Everyone that gets an LLM in the United States is qualified for the New York bar exam. Asian Pacific Law Students Association. Why would you highlight that you joined a group of people that are your ethnicity when everyone knows your ethnicity, and you just you were a member of it, and so you could put it on your resume? What does that mean to be a member? It means you showed up at some events, were a member, and maybe went to some mixers. I mean, okay, so I'm back. We're going to ChatGPT. Okay, so now we're back on that. Guess we got that. Okay, so we'll go down back to this person from Ghana. Let's see here. Mongolia. Wow. Okay, so let's plug in this new resume real quickly. Oh, I see it here. And then this is actually very good. It put the education at the end because the education makes them look more qualified to work at a US law firm. So let me just see. So these are very simple changes that I was able to make for this person from Mongolia. And then I also was able to take what looks like their experience, and I was able their law school, and I was able to put their law school at the very end, which I like. I like that the law school is at the end now because it's not emphasizing that the person is from a foreign country. You don't have to talk about the fact that you're eligible for the New York bar exam. Anybody that reads your resume is going to know that. You don't need to talk about that you're fluent in English. If you're going to law school in the US, which is conducted in English, you are obviously fluent if you can sit in law school classes. So people don't need to know that. Publications, human rights, constitutional rights, editor of the Mongolian translation of the law book, Nipo Law Publishing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So people do this on their resume. You don't talk about constitutional rights and human rights. You don't want to talk about that stuff because human rights and things are people that may make trouble in a law firm. Anybody that's concerned with how people are treated may not like how people are treated in a law firm. So you don't emphasize that. You also don't want to look like an academic. So if you look like, an academic and you just give some presentation, law firms are going to think you're an academic and not an attorney. Attorneys are, people that are very direct and are concerned about practicing law and aren't concerned about being an academic. If you get an LLM, they're concerned about you being an academic. So you take all this stuff off. Why do law firms not like academics? Law firms don't like academics because the writing is theoretical. It goes all over the place and analyzes issues in far more detail and with a different slant than an attorney in a law firm would do. Now, if you authored a law review article, that's fine. But if you authored, these are just things that aren't relevant. Co-author, translated a book and you're Mongolian. No one cares. Okay, so no one cares about that. Skills, proficient in case law research. Of course you are. You're in a US law school. Any attorney that's in US law schools knows how to do case law research and statutory analysis. Everybody understands how to do that. People understand that have worked in companies and law firms how to provide legal advice. People that have worked in law firms understand that they can present legal documents. So no, no one cares about this. Like, no one cares that you're, an expert in analyzing constitutional law frameworks. That is not what happens in law firms. Law firms, you will go and you will analyze different types of cases. That's it. So you fix that. Interest, visiting MBA arenas and exploring. So again, you have these, you like visiting local MBA arenas and exploring the options. That's fine. Studying historical landmarks. That's interesting. Participating in cultural discussions, debates. That's fine too. So people like interest, by the way. It makes you interesting. It makes you look like you're focused on other things. But now you have this drastically shortened resume. I do not know why law schools don't teach you to do this. I don't know why, career services offices do. Now there's some very good career services offices and some very bad ones. And the bad ones are typically staffed often by attorneys that didn't like law firms and may not have done well there. So they're not always the best experts at this. So I would encourage everyone that's watching this. All I care about is getting people jobs in law firms, because if I do, I make money. If I don't get people jobs in law firms, then I don't make money. So I have to spend a lot of time representing someone and getting them a job in a law and a lot of time and money. And I will only do that if they look focused. Oh my God. Food services associate, part-time. So you worked in a kitchen? Really? My God. Okay. So working in a kitchen has absolutely nothing to do with being an attorney. Why would you tell people you worked in a kitchen? Wow. Okay, so you don't tell people you worked in a kitchen, because if you worked in a kitchen, that's basically saying that you were a chef or a busboy. I don't know. No one cares. So everything is about being a litigator and all the sort of stuff you did. And this resume is suddenly fixed in a good resume. And even if you didn't go to a US law school, all these lessons you're getting here are incredibly important to fixing a resume. So how does this person get a job? They apply to firms in smaller markets. They apply to firms in as many possible firms as they can. So I'm going to show everyone here that doesn't think they're employable how to find a job. So cities and municipalities in New York City and in New York. So you're not going to get a job in New York City. I'll just be very clear with you. You're going to be competing with an overabundance of attorneys in New York City. Anybody that wants to get a job in New York City, if your resume isn't really good, you're not going to get a job in New York City, because there are too many attorneys in New York City. There's probably 50% more attorneys than there are jobs. So why would you apply to jobs in New York City? Cannot open the page. Okay, Google, go back. Why that page is not open? Cities and towns in New York City. Okay. Some reason this isn't opening either. Let's try Wikipedia again. Wikipedia is not opening right now. It's New York City by population. Maybe this will, okay. Maybe there's something wrong with my, okay, New York City is by population.
Okay, so resume review, this one, discovery, we talked about the person in Ghana, or, okay. So this one here, this resume is talking about someone that's a licensed attorney with years of achievement in a private practice. Again, this stuff comes off right here. This person is at a firm in Pasadena. They're saying it's a company description. Companies, law firms are not companies, so that comes out. And then dates of employment, you don't need to say dates of employment. You just say this duties. You don't need to say duties. Everyone knows what that means. You put that there. And then we're going to go through this accomplishments. You don't need accomplishments. We'll work on that in a second. And then company description. Everyone knows you don't say that the University of California, Los Angeles is one of the most comprehensive continuing education providers. You don't need to do that. And then Gorman Law Office, title proprietor attorney. You don't need to do that. Here's Gorman, founding partner attorney, Information West, same thing. So I'm just going to plug all this into ChatGPT. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but we'll do the same thing. And you can see that anything like this plugged into ChatGPT, will, make the person look much better. So let's go back here. Can you do the same thing? Same thing for this resume, but so, with ChatGPT, by the way, the nice thing about this is you don't need to spend a lot of time that you might have done before. So, this person again is IP, trademark, and transactions. This is entertainment, which there's a lot of IP protection stuff. Entertainment. This is trademark. This is entertainment. This is talent agreements and entertainment. So this is all you need to say. So the person again needs to focus one practice area, and that's it. So you take all this, and all this stuff here is completely unnecessary. All this information. And again, you have to just understand that when you're writing a resume, your job is to not confuse the reader, and the job is to make you look focused, because you have to look focused. If you don't look focused, no law firm is going to hire you. As a matter of fact, this person probably couldn't get a job with an entertainment law firm or an entertainment company based on what they were doing before. So now everything is related to this entertainment production companies, entertainment, trademark, entertainment. So this resume is now awesome. Before it was just a shit show, and now it's actually very good. And the person is employable in a law firm to do trademark and IP transactions, whereas before they were not. And so this is completely fixed. Okay, Dublin City semester abroad. So no one cares that you spent a semester abroad. What does a semester abroad mean? It means that you had the money and the time to go overseas and study there. No one cares about a semester abroad. And people like to put that in their resume. They think it's important, but it has nothing to do with being a focused American attorney. The Gilman School, Baltimore, 1985, that's fine. Professional recognition, selected to super lawyers as one of a small number of attorneys selected to super lawyers. Patrick Gorman gave this recognition through achievement and peer recognition, other distinguished criteria. Okay, so super lawyers is not something that you should necessarily be proud of. It's something that a lot of times people get for paying for advertising in different publications. This says nothing about super lawyers where it is. It says nothing about that. There's attorneys in major law firms all over the world that are at big firms that are incredible attorneys that aren't selected to super lawyers. If you read super lawyers, they typically are just not always super lawyers. So I wouldn't put that on there as well. I love that this person is admitted to California, Maryland. California is a very hard bar exam. There's a lot of entertainment companies and law firms in California. So I really like that. And I would just say you don't need to say bar admissions. You can just say admissions. California references available upon request. So you're telling the law firm that you have references and that if they request them, you can give them. So why would you tell the law firm that? If the law firm wants references, the law firm is going to get references. So that's really all you need to be concerned about. So law firm will get references if it wants references. Your resume 9, Cornell Law School. Okay, Cornell University. Amsterdam Rothstein. Okay, this is good. So the person's at a big law firm. Oh, but they were a law clerk. I don't like that. Okay, so 2024. Oh, they were a law firm. I'm sorry, 2024 is their graduation date. Okay, so this graduated there, this development. So we'll just fix this. You don't need to say graduated, you just say May 2024. We don't need to say graduated, just say May 2022. College of Human, summa cum laude, is very good. So this person is actually very smart. So this person got really good grades. They were on Dean's List all semesters. I like that. They got a life sciences minor, and that's actually okay because they're doing IP law. So that's fine. So you go there, then you would go to experience right here, and then they're at this firm, Amsterdam Rothstein. Okay, so there's a problem with this. So March 2025, they were a law clerk, and they graduated in 2024. So here's what happened to this person, unfortunately. This happens to a lot of people. This person failed the bar exam. So there's no reason that they would have been a law clerk. When they graduated in June, they would have got their bar results in November. And then they would have found out if they passed the bar or not in November. And if they didn't pass the bar, the law firm would say, you get one more chance. So you get one more chance to pass the bar. And if you pass the bar, we will make you an associate. So this person, unfortunately, didn't pass the bar. Now, this happens to a lot of attorneys. It happens to a lot of very smart attorneys. There's nothing that you need to do. There's you can't fix that right now. And unfortunately, for this person, there is no bar admission listed on their resume. Now, maybe it was above. I deleted it, but I don't see any bar admission on the resume. So that's unfortunate. So I would just take out, you could put on law clerk if you want, but I would not emphasize that. I would probably, this is not dishonest. I would just delete that. And I would say all this stuff that this person did. And then I would do the same thing. I would, and this is again too long. So all law firms care about is your legal experience. They don't care that you were an extern for a year, really. They don't care that you were a marketing intern before law school. That has nothing to do with being an attorney, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Being a law intern for 1 month, like why would you put that on your resume? A marketing intern. But why would you put having been a marketing intern on your resume when that is completely irrelevant to what you did? Merchandising intern, no, you don't need to put that you were a merchandising intern. These are things you did before law school. Legal aid, legal leadership experience, legal aid, society, legal volunteer. No one cares about that, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, 1 second. Teaching assistant, activity, skills, and interest. Oh, for God's sake, no one cares about this. You should have been studying during this time. So this is too much. No one cares about that. Interest, vinyasa yoga, that's kind of interesting. And then interest, activity, skills, and interest. This should be interest. Teaching assistant, no one cares about that. No one cares about you were the witness cognation lab. No one cares about that. You were part of the Legal Aid Society. No one cares about that. And then you did this, Delta in-house legal internship. I mean, this is crazy. Like, okay. So the problem with all this is this other intern stuff is not even related to anything you're doing related to this. So let's just run this through ChatGPT real quickly. And you, intellectual property, make it law firm seeking extradition, trademark, copyright license. Okay, so the nice thing about working in a company, if you were to try to do that, is that you would be much more employable probably in a company without the bar right now. You need to concentrate on passing the bar. But right here, making all these changes that we just talked about is going to make your resume much more employable. And again, there's nothing wrong with not having passed the bar. There's plenty of attorneys and law firms that pass the bar, but this again just makes everything about IP related work, which is much better than what you had before. You can see that. Okay, experience, California Department of Insurance. Okay, so law firms typically don't like people that have worked in in-house government positions. Government positions typically do not require a lot of accountability. Because they don't require accountability, they're much more, law firms don't like it. But I'll just run this through real quickly, ChatGPT, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. Okay, so then we have, this is much better. This person, by the way, just, having been in the government as long as you have, it's going to be difficult to get jobs in law firms. Your experience is, there's too much going on, and it's not focused enough, which is very common for government attorneys. But we'll make it easier to read. It's still going to be a little bit difficult for you to get a position this way. I don't think that we handle deputy general counsel. We didn't get these other jobs as well. So let's just do that. Wow, look at all these firms. Okay, can you also do this? That there, and then we'll be done. So this is too long, but this you can see. Oh, so here's what it did. This is actually very interesting. So instead of having individual descriptions for each firm, it just said that you were at these firms between these dates. I like that. So if you're an older attorney, or if you're an attorney that's bounced around a lot, just put the names of the firms like that, like they did right here. This is brilliant. So this is exactly what should be done with this resume. So if you worked in a lot of different jobs, you need to have the resume focus itself like this at the end. So we'll do this with these firms, and then we're done. Okay, so that's all the resumes from today. The ones were selected. I will just kind of summarize right now the points that we covered and some bullet points for you to write down. This resume workshop will be sent to you when we're done. If anybody has any questions right now about what we've covered, if it's your resume, it should be, you can ask questions about it if I review it. If you have any other questions, I can review it. But the big things are Grammarly. Everybody's resumes that we looked at had typos and all sorts of stuff. So everyone's resumes had typos. They had incorrect grammar. You need to remove that. Fix makes you look bad. So everyone's resumes had that. Everyone's resumes, summaries at the top makes you look bad. Everyone's resumes talked about lack of achievement in law school, like Dean's List 2 semesters. Why would somebody hire someone that was on the Dean's List 2 semesters when they can hire someone that was on the Dean's List all semesters? Resumes had association memberships are relevant to, memberships are relevant to their current position, just irrelevant that are non-consequential. Everyone's resumes were not succinct and talked about one practice area. ChatGPT. Even if you're proud of all these things you've done, it's not going to get you hired. So everyone's resumes were too long. Need to quickly make it easy for readers to review. Everyone's resumes were too long. Everyone's resumes were, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. I apologize. Sorry that. So Grammarly, everyone had correct grammar. Everyone had summaries. That makes you look bad. It makes law firms think that they can't read they can't understand your experience. And when you do these summaries, by the way, it's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, why would you have a summary, of something that's just, non-concept. I mean, when they can read it from your experience. So if you have that, resumes talked about lack of achievement, resumes talked about associations, resumes did not talk about one practice area. Remember, law firms, companies want people that are specialists, and that they can understand. So just think about it this way. If you are a law firm or a company, would you want to hire, like, would a resume that did 15 different things be interesting to you or not? So law firms hire specialists. So you need to use ChatGPT to do that. Law firms resumes are all too long for the readers to review. You need quick bullet points. Everyone's resumes were, listing, things that everyone knows about. Fluent in the language that you do. Fluent in the language, you obviously are admitted to the district court, admitted to a federal court. Everyone's resume is listed, experience irrelevant. Everyone's resume is listed too many jobs when they could be summarized. Everyone's resumes listed, many titles that should be de-emphasized. Everyone's resumes did not make them look strong, brought out things that were not strong. So those are, a few of the big things that we covered today. I think that, if you make all of these improvements to your resume, you're going to be much better off. These are all everybody's, you spent the time in this webinar today, which could change your life if you actually adopt what I'm talking about. The biggest things I can tell you that you can do right now are Grammarly and ChatGPT. They can focus on one practice area. If you do that and nothing more, you're going to be well off. If you eliminate all these things that are relevant to practicing law, you're going to be much better off. Your resume needs to be focused on one practice area. You do not want to put all of these ridiculous associations and things that have nothing to do with keeping the resume focused. You don't want to emphasize average law school performance or honors in one class. You do not want to talk about things that are relevant to your practice area being focused on your resume. All these things will get you more jobs. And every single resume on here went from the bottom 85% to the top, probably at least 20%, relevance of the resumes out there. Okay, let me see here. This person has a question here about government. So I'll answer the questions right now. And if anybody has any questions, there's only like 3 questions. A lot of people got knocked off the webinar. Glad you signed back on. Would you qualify your remarks about attorneys for attorney leadership positions as those appointed by the USAG? If you want to work in the government resumes can be different than the typical law firm resume. So, if government agencies will often have check marks and things that they look for that the person can do. They are different than law firm resumes. So if there is a special type of resume that is used in the government, and I see that a lot, and the governments have check marks and things that they require that they check off, like when they're hiring attorneys, it's just a different kind of hiring, then yes, you can have a different resume and you have to follow whatever the standards are for government terms. I only care about law firms. So I'm only trying to get you a job in a law firm. I'm only trying to get you a job in a specialist position as opposed to a generalist position. So, government resumes are completely different. I have friends that work in the government and they write down every single little thing that they did, and that makes them more employable, and it may. The people making decisions about hiring government attorneys may be bureaucrats that have a different level of experience. So, different way of reviewing things. So you can do that. I also wanted to just real briefly, I didn't, my computer shut off and I was showing people that why anybody can get a job. So, if you're in New York, so everybody thinks that they can't get a job. And so many people on this call are like rudderless, like they can't get jobs. They're not getting interviews. They're not closing interviews. You will close interviews and people will hire you if you're a specialist in something because they need that. So you have all these municipalities in New York and you can sort them by population. So you have New York City, obviously, which is very difficult to get a job in because there's so many attorneys. There's more attorneys than there are jobs. But then you start getting into these smaller places like Harrison, New York. Let's do Harrison, New York, because I like that. So you could go, list of, just say you want to do personal injury. I don't care what you do. Like, you can do any practice area. You can do trust and estates, you can do personal injury, but if your resume is focused on something, then you can do it. So personal injury law firms in Harrison, New York. And by the way, personal injury is a freaking rock star practice here to get into. The wealthiest attorneys that I know of are personal injury attorneys. I'm just throwing that out there. So, you may think it's not a good practice area, but if you learn it and then you can build your own practice, you can do incredibly well. So you have all of these personal injury attorneys in New York and Harrison, New York, and there's just countless personal injury attorneys. They just page after page, and this isn't even one of the largest, one of the largest cities in New York. These are sponsored listings, by the way. These aren't even all of the personal injury attorneys. So then we go to these are the sponsored ones, and then you're also going to have non-sponsored ones that are going to come up later. Then you have these personal injury attorneys, you have these personal injury attorneys, you have fine law top personal injury attorneys. So just in Harrison, New York, there's probably hundreds of places that any attorney can apply to that people need in order to work. I mean, in order to sue people. And this is just Harrison, New York. And so you go here and we go to list of municipalities, and this just keeps going. And there's going to be personal injury attorneys in every one of these cities. So the only way to get a job, if you're like a foreign attorney or you don't think your background is that great, is just to start applying to firms, companies and law firms that have to do your practice area and all these different areas. So let's just say you're a trademark attorney and you want to work in, you're trying to find a job. So you would just go here, you go list of trademark attorneys in Hempstead, New York, right? So you're going to get trademark attorneys here. So while a definitive list is difficult to compile, it's a smaller city. There's, trademark, you're going to be able to find some trademark attorneys. Maybe you're not finding them there because it's a smaller thing, but it says look at the attorney director from the USTPO, look at the New York Bar Association, and that. So you may not have a lot there, but if you try it in another practice area, maybe you want to do family law, that would be one that would have a lot, or you just could go commercial litigation if you want to do commercial litigation attorneys in Hempstead, New York, and you're getting Baker Tilly, you're getting all these different places where you can find attorneys. So, and then here's a directory right here. So if you have a directory of all these people that do this work in Hempstead, New York. So, and again, there's a ton of them. So if you were to do this for this city, and then you were to do it for all of these cities, like you would get jobs. Why wouldn't, these are places, everything in the legal profession and getting a job is what the law is supply and demand. So the law of supply and demand is pretty simple. If there's less supply of something, attorneys in a market, then you're going to have a better chance getting jobs. And I can guarantee you, if you start applying to litigation positions or law firms that do litigation in Newburgh, New York, that's a pretty smart thing to do because there's not a lot of people applying for those jobs. There's not a lot of people like you. So why wouldn't you go through this list of places and start just applying randomly to these firms and these attorneys, telling them that you're interested in potentially working for them? So how do you do that? You just go to the website, about me. This guy says he does commercial litigation. You send him your resume. You say, hey, I want to do commercial litigation. I'd love to help you. Could I have an informational interview? Simple, send your resume. I guarantee you that Keith and Alan Brown never receives unsolicited resumes of people to work with him. And so imagine doing this for 1,000 attorneys. You would get a job. So getting a job, by the way, is the easiest thing in the world. You do not need to be a contract attorney. You can get a job if you didn't pass the bar. And when you're waiting, you can get a job because there's thousands of people, tens of thousands of attorneys in New York State that could hire you if they have a potential need. So I just, I don't understand when people say they can't get a job, because if you follow this simple advice and just apply to everyone you possibly can, you will get a job. Why wouldn't someone that has the work hire you if they're never getting applications? Maybe they won't hire you for the money you want, but you're going to get, other stuff. Thank you for having this workshop. Just 2 questions. As to short-term jobs before law school, if we take these jobs out, wouldn't that present some gap periods on the resume? Will I be finishing a clerkship this October and applying for current open? Should I put my end date on my resume? Yes, you put the end date of your clerkship because people are going to want to know when you're able to be hired. Short-term jobs before law school should be eliminated unless they're related to what you do. So if you want to be an entertainment attorney and you worked in entertainment companies before law school, then that would be good to put in there. If you want to be a healthcare attorney and you worked in the healthcare industry before law school, that would probably be good to put that in there as well. So there's nothing wrong with doing that if it's related to your practice area. But if it's not, law firms are only concerned about people that are going to be doing, work related to, other types of things. There's questions unrelated. Anybody can ask questions unrelated to resumes if you want. I only have one question after this, so if I don't get any more questions, we'll wrap it up. So anybody that has any questions related to resumes or anything should do that. How much should you socialize with coworkers? You can socialize with them as much as you want, but if you socialize with coworkers, personal information about you will be widely shared. So no one is your friend. So no one is your friend. I'm in a law firm. Everyone is a competitor. Everyone is a competitor, and everyone is looking for weaknesses. Every associate is a competitor, and everyone is looking for weaknesses. So they will judge you. So if you are in a bad marriage, they will judge you. If you are someone that drinks too much at socialized events, they will judge you. If you talk about negative things that have happened to you, they will judge you. If you talk about illnesses, they will judge you. If you talk about not liking your job or aspects of your job, they will distribute that widely. If you talk about being an AA, that will be distributed throughout the entire firm. If you talk about cheating on your spouse, everyone in the firm will know. So you socialize with coworkers, but you sure as hell don't tell them any negative information about yourself. You don't let them know that, because once you tell one person, just assume that every single person in the law firm will know about it. If you want to talk about your political affiliation, every single person in the law firm will know about it. And if they are composed primarily of, Democrats, and you are a hardcore Republican, Democrats will form judgments about you because of that. They will judge you. So why would you, if you, I don't know, whatever your personal information is that's negative, assume that everyone will know about it and everybody will circulate it. So how much should you socialize with coworkers? You socialize with them and you be friendly with them, but you don't tell them any personal information about you that could be used against you. Anything. Like it will be used against you and it will be weaponized. I saw someone that I was in a relationship with, her partner used to talk to her that she worked for one partner, about all sorts of personal information about her. And so she talked about her. And then one weekend, and this personal information involved dating sites, dating men, all sorts of things, and having a nervous breakdown. The partner shared this with her, which she shouldn't have done. But at the same time, my friend came in one day and said that she'd met a guy in Club Med, and that guy came out and spent a weekend with her, having sex 5 times a day, and it was amazing, and she's never going to talk to him again. And so the partner judged her, and once the partner heard that, the woman's career ended. Like, she just didn't like that. And the woman was in a very specialized practice area, which is trademark. And at the time she was fired, there was only one trademark job in the entire state of California at that particular time. Now, she could have gotten a trademark job had she done what I've recommended here and applied to individual trademark attorneys, but she was only applying to law firms. And so her entire legal career ended by sharing personal information. So any personal information you share will be used against you. If you get drunk at a party, that will be used against you. I had a partner that was working at a major law firm in New York. I think it was Paul Hastings, which is an amazing, awesome law firm. And he got drunk at a party, but not really that drunk. He just slipped getting into a taxi cab car, and another partner that he worked with, we was friends with, saw it, and that became weaponized against him, and he was in a bad situation. So, that's something that can, that sort of thing can negatively affect you. So you need to be very careful with socializing with coworkers. You cannot use drugs. You cannot, you have to just be very, very careful. You can't drink too much. You can't talk about family problems. If you have a child that has a mental disorder, you just, anything that you talk about, if you have a child that has a mental disorder and needs to be in the hospital a lot, and you need to be out of work, or the child has some sort of drug problem, I mean, that can, be used against you. Anything that you say can be used against you. So that's the number one rule of law firms. It can hurt you. Just this lesson alone can save your career. Get a good resume by your standards, 10 years at law firms, including 2 Am Law 100 law firms, patent IP litigation, then in-house at a Dow 30 corporation, but that was 20 years ago. Then 6 years of contract work, document review, and 4 years of compliance with a Silicon Valley internet giant, government request for, would a law firm want me from IP 20 years ago? Is my contract work useful for anything? So no, 20 years ago, your IP work is not going to be thought about, all this stuff. You need to, if you can, you need to focus whatever work you did at these in-house companies, try to make it look like you're doing IP if you can, running it through ChatGPT. If you can't, then just make yourself look like an e-discovery attorney. And then talk about you were at those firms 20 years ago, and try to make your contract work look focused. But in addition, your contract work, you should just say you're an attorney and not a contract, like I talked about it. Okay, again, okay, thoughts on cover letters. This is a mixed opinion of whether or not they're helpful. So no, just I'm applying for your position as a ex-attorney, which is going to be one thing like that. I believe, I would very much like the opportunity to do name. That's it. Name. People love that. So very short cover letter that's all you need. That's it. So this is for a firm with an opening. So an opening, that's all you need. You don't need to talk about your experience. If you talk about your experience, people are going to they're not going to read it. They don't care. No one's going to read a cover letter. So just applying for a position as an ex-attorney, and say, I'm a trademark attorney, and love the opportunity to meet with you, information. Impressed by I have experience. I didn't mean to say that. You could say name. That's it. That's it. So you could say something like that, and then you could just say, I would just say, I'm impressed by your experience. That's it. So very short cover letters. You can also, say something along the lines of, I'm planning on, relocating, something like that. So, very short, very direct, non-threatening, say for an information, obvious, something like that. If it's a solo, something like that. It's very unthreatening. It's very simple and direct, and that's all you need to say. So cover letters, one line, 1 or 2 lines. Those are the most effective cover letters. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is the last question. So any last questions? This is the most valuable thing. I heard they really prompt you to say something negative about you so they can get a reaction of you saying something negative and spread it, have a glass up and talk to anyone. Everything you say will be weaponized. That's absolutely true. So in a law firm, everything you say will be weaponized against you. Okay, well, thanks everyone for being on the webinar today. I think that we learned a lot. I hope that all this stuff helped you. By staying in this webinar and watching all this, you can change the direction of your life and career. This may be, if you follow the advice I'm saying, the most important career advice you ever receive in your life, because no one else is teaching this. And the only reason I understand this, I'm not like some special, person up here on a podium. I've been doing this for 25 years. And when I work with attorneys, I need to make sure that they're employable. So, and these are the things you need to do. Okay, well, thanks everyone again. And I hope everyone has a good rest of your day. And I will be back next week, hopefully with even better advice.